Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Hi, Carlos. I corrected my
That was in Deborah's memo. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, how much of this do you want me to get? Right. I mean, or I can bring my laptop up and put it.
You have the clicker, hold it in,
Okay.
yeah, you have to change it. And then I'll bring the.
Is the clicker the one that can be, that Brian had that,
No, we're not fancy like that.
yeah, that's one that you can magnify.
Yeah. Yeah, that was,
It's like two.
yeah, I think somebody was giving him a police pointer. No, I got this, I got this.
Well, can we just change it in the presentation? We just hold up. That surprised me when I saw it, and I just didn't think to check in the elementary. Yeah, so I think we should change it in the presentation though, because that's what people will see. Yeah. Okay.
Hi. We look like we're gonna get my.
This is not one that I was watching carefully.
We've gone through pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So,
Let me change it there.
right. Yeah. Hello. I am tired. Yeah. Whether you want to be or not, right?
So it's changed in the presentation. Okay.
Well, for council, send me. If you send it to me, then I ask for response. We have everything that is sent to me. So,
Squash the idea. Open the boundary between the
It's not in the comp plan. It's not in the comp plan. That's just, so we have a list of projects. It's not there.
I saw that.
It's not there. So we have a general policy to push for connectivity, but it's gonna be where it makes sense, where, you know. So I mean, you can make the point if you want, but it's not gonna be, there's nothing to be amended in the comp plan, because this is not a project that is listed there. What we have, for instance, the extension of the I have and you have some, you know, criteria, but in general speaking, the city wants to promote connectivity, but not, that not.
This doesn't have to go through like first reading. Is that how, that's like an ordinance?
Well, I'll just email you and send it to
Okay, so
If you send we're not gonna put it to council. Everything that we do to the public, because this is a public hearing, this is an opportunity for the public to speak out, right, about that. But there is nothing to be amended because there's nothing related to specifically that area. Okay?
Yeah. Okay. All of ours. Last week.
You're on now. Yeah. Thank you.
I remember the kid and I couldn't call you back.
I feel like I'm just getting started in the race.
Okay.
And,
That's something that
you know, because I started a bunch of new things. Maybe even an Iron. And I ran a little too fast out the gate and realized I got to go on somebody to finish. And so
You're talking about the
dialed
you're
in.
talking about the
Because I had
provision.
because opportunities kept coming and I kept seizing them because I didn't want to go with the miss a chance. So you just have to balance performing to the level that people expect you to do, but at the same time, I know speaking vague, but I mean, there's a lot of opportunities that I want to take advantage of.
I did it.
Time. I'm hoping this gives, settles down a little bit. The school year is ending, my other committees that the chair is ending.
Okay.
That gives me the summer.
First Wednesday.
Time to write. Pushing
So,
for such a article. So I'm working with rewrite articles.
maybe just the second.
And at the end of the day, it's like, they don't take it. They're like, well, thanks, it was a really good job. But instead of one coming, I wasted it.
Okay, we're good.
It is what it is.
Good.
Yeah, so maybe the second.
But there is no fast time, that's the fast time.
I can wait. You want to wait a couple minutes?
Welcome back.
5 minutes?
But yeah, so it's just.
Steve, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Here to Maryland Department 5.
I mean, since we don't have much audience participation, I don't see the reason. The room was full that was the story.
Well, even though. How are you, sir?
Hi, how are you?
Good? We're waiting for Emma.
You guys did a good job. I was watching.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah. I was traveling yesterday. She's in the questions and that. I checked the video, so they were answered. They were good. Yeah.
I guess. We should apply?
Yeah. Like every time, trying to hear as much as you can. But we had a lot of meetings last week. I think now it's so down hopefully.
They can't sort of.
I did that intentionally and purposely, and all those activities.
Really?
It's just not what you go home. No, I'm just gonna present briefly.
Yeah.
We just recognize her. We're going to start. Okay. All righty. Good evening. Welcome to the April 12th Local Planning Agency. I call the meeting to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, present tonight we have Darrell Lopez, David Pollack, Bruce Kavanaugh, Stephen Rich, Brian Smith, Matias Maggio, and Emma is on her way.
All right. We'll recognize her when she appears, and if we can take a moment to silence our cell phones for the duration of the meeting. Next item on the agenda would be approval of minutes from our previous March 29th.
Motion to approve.
I have a
Second.
second by Brian.
Brian Smith?
Any discussions? Everybody? Okay, all those in favor of approving of the minutes from March 29th, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Let me recognize that Emma is approaching the chair. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on any item that's not presented on the agenda tonight is welcome to do so at this time. Seeing none, I close out the public comment section. We'll move on to public meetings. We have no public meetings at this time. We do have a public hearing on ordinance number 1720, comprehensive plan update. I'm assuming staff's going to take over at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request for the LPA to transmit Ordinance 1720, the city's comprehensive plan update to 2045, to the City Council. Per Land Development Code, Section 2.4D and E, the local planning agency shall conduct a public hearing and make recommendations to the City Council regarding the adoption of amendments to the comprehensive plan or element or portion thereof. The LDC Section 2.5A and B, City Council shall conduct a public hearing as required by controlling law regarding the adoption of or amendments to the comprehensive plan and shall have final approval authority of adoption of or amendments to the comprehensive plan. Tonight is the first of three different public hearings for Ordinance 1720. The LPA has conducted several work sessions to discuss the amendments to Ordinance 1720 to plan for the city's growth to the year 2045. Staff would like to thank you for your hard work and dedication to the long meetings that we've had to discuss the comprehensive plan. Tonight is the transmittal public hearing for the comprehensive plan. Your recommendation from tonight's public hearing will be presented to the City Council at its August 18th, 2022 transmittal public hearing. If transmitted by the City Council, then it will be mailed to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity and other reviewing agencies. If there are no objections from the reviewing agencies and FDEO, it will be scheduled for adoption before City Council sometime around June or July of this year. Curtis Ostraka and Coquelin Ma from VHB are here tonight to provide a presentation for the board. Curtis, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the local planning agency. For the record, Kurt Ostraka with VHB. Our business address is 225 East Robinson in Orlando. And just an amendment to Ms. Pierre, she mentioned in August 12th.
Yes, I'm glad you did. So the City Council transmittal public hearing is April 18th.
So she covered all of these points, so I'm going to skip to the next part in terms of the presentation. So tonight, as Ms. Pierre said, we've had numerous long meetings together in a workshop setting to go for you to have the time to review the elements, the maps, the data analysis that we presented. Where appropriate, based on consensus of the members here, we did make minor changes throughout and then provided you with a full transmittal copy which is part of the agenda workshop for today. So this presentation is going to cover some of the high-level overview of the changes that you have already seen. Throughout the elements, if you look at it, there's quite a lot of red in terms of strike-through and underlines. So that's to make minor text changes, to either clarify the intent or make something just a little bit easier to read in more plain language, to change land use names where appropriate, so we have internal consistency throughout all of the documents. And then over time, since this plan was adopted, numerous state statutes have changed. The state actually repealed one of the Florida Administrative Code sections dealing with comprehensive plans, so we had to take out outdated references throughout the plan. And then one other note, we used the Bieber high estimate for population as the basis for our 2045 population. So that's an increase of about 16,000 persons. And then when you apply the average household size for the city of Oviedo, that translates to roughly plus or minus 5,400 new units of demand that we need to plan for and accommodate in the 2045 land use plan. So please, I would be happy to take any questions as we go through this. It would give me a nice break and a chance to catch my breath. So please feel free to, at your discretion, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take questions.
Okay.
So this is a copy of the proposed 2040 future land use map. There's notable changes in 5 areas that I'm going to walk through individually. We've gone through this before, but we're putting this on the record as part of the transmittal hearing. But before we get to the map changes, we did quite a bit of cleanup throughout the elements. We changed in the low-density residential, increased the maximum density up to 4.0 units per acre, dwelling units per acre, which is consistent with the adjacent Seminole County land development, or low-density residential future land use designation, and then did some clarifying on mixed-use thresholds for those. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that, but I do have a lot of material to move through, and this didn't come up in our previous discussions. For medium density residential, again, we did an increase to 4.0 while increasing the maximum to 8 dwelling units per acre. And then for medium density residential, we're now going to, if approved, allow up to 10 units per acre when it's consistent with the new bonus policy. And I'm going to walk through that a little bit later on in this presentation. For high density residential, increasing the maximum from 15 to 16 units per acre, and then increasing the density bonus, which was odd before because it only gave you a 3/4 of a unit bonus, up to 15.75, up to 24 units per acre. And throughout the elements, we had some kind of legacy situations where maybe you got 3.9 units per acre or 4.1 units per acre. We've tried to make it an even number throughout this, just it's a little bit easier to interpret. For office, increasing the maximum floor area ratio from 0.3 to 0.4 FAR, so that provides a little bit more buildable area or development potential for office sites. And then also increasing the intensity bonus from 0.4 to 0.75, again, if consistent with that bonus policy we're going to talk about in a little bit. All right, cleanup on the mixed use category. In this case, we want to demonstrate or say the minimum of 40% of land use is used for a certain use, and then no more than 80% of that use, so that basically ensures that you cannot get 100% of any one use, and you need to have, as long as it falls between that 40 and 80% category, there's some flexibility there for the landowner, as well as flexibility for staff to interpret that. So no one land use can exceed 90% of the total acreage, and no one land use can be less than 10% of the total acreage. We added some language that the mixed-use developments must contain a functional, compatible mix of uses within close proximity to each other and encourage essentially pedestrian or cyclist travel between uses, so you don't have to drive between places. And this language is, we find this throughout the other new future land use categories that we're going to dive into next. All right. So I mentioned on the future land use map, there are 5 main areas that we made some kind of sweeping changes to. The first one is within what was previously called the downtown mixed-use subareas. Previously, there were 5 different sub-areas called New Downtown, Old Downtown, South of Mitchell Hammock, East of Central, and West of Central. We have consolidated those into 2 main designations. One of which being called the downtown core, which is intended to be the most intense and dense parts of the city. So this is where we have Oviedo on the Park, as well as the new downtown redevelopment area to the north. So those are represented in, my laser pointer won't work on a screen, I don't believe, but it's the dark brown areas. So those would allow between 14 to 30 dwelling units per acre of residential, or if a developer were to use either a horizontal or a mixed-use project, they could go up to 50 units per acre. And then if they were to achieve the bonus thresholds of policy 1-1.1.6, which again, I'm going to show you the full text of, they could achieve up to 100 units per acre, given that they meet a development agreement and other provisions provided for in the plan. Office, commercial, and institutional can go up to 1.0 FAR, and then with bonuses up to 2.0 FAR. So that means twice as much building per unit of land can be achieved. So it would provide the most dense or intense development within the city. As you can see, generally the new downtown and old downtown sub-areas were collapsed into the downtown core description and uses. Whereas the South of Mitchell Hammock, the East of Central, and West of Central generally became the downtown transition, which is represented in the light brown. So in this area, it's meant to be a transition between existing properties, which are mostly residential, some commercial, some office, around the downtown area, and this would allow up to 12 units for single-family or townhome development, up to 24 units for multifamily, and then if the landowner or applicant were able to meet the city's bonus criteria, they could go up to 40 units per acre. And then would allow for up to 0.5 FAR for office and commercial uses, 1.0 FAR for institutional, and then if they were to, again, achieve the city's bonus criteria, it could go up to 1.0 for the office and commercial uses. In order to ensure that a mixture of uses is achieved within these downtown areas and make sure it's not just a single use, we did revise the old mixed-use percentages. Previously, it was very hard to achieve mathematically because we had very narrow ranges. So you had to have, 20% commercial and 5% office, and so it was very difficult for anybody to achieve those exactly and not have and have flexibility for market conditions. So these have been revised where development projects totaling 5 acres or more must be a mixed-use development. So that's a parcel of sufficient size that they can have multiple uses on it. They need to have at least 2 of the permissible land uses, which are listed in the columns on the right, which are residential, commercial, office, light industrial, entertainment, public and public-private institutions, public and private elementary, middle, and high schools within the core, and very similar permissible uses within the transition area. And they must be a functional and compatible mix of uses together. So again, trying to provide for good planning and compatibility of uses next to each other. It does not say that uses need to be vertically oriented or horizontally mixed use. There's flexibility for an applicant to achieve it either way within that 5-acre parcel. And then an important part of this, and that we've talked about before, is that the mix of land uses has to be approved through not only a master land use plan, but also within a development agreement. So that's something that would come before LPA as well as before City Council. The next area that we're going to take a look at, one of our 5 areas, is the marketplace. So this is also known as the Oviedo Mall DRI. This is a site that has many people in the vision exercises said, let's see how this can be redeveloped for high-intensity commercial or office or residential, since it's very close to a regional transportation network. So not much of it is vacant today, only about 35 acres of the 215. But again, as we're looking at long-term planning to the year 2045, many people thought that this was a suitable site for redevelopment or repurposing. So this would allow up to 50 units per acre of residential, or if it's a horizontal or vertical mixed use, up to 75 units per acre. And then if a applicant's able to meet the city's criteria for bonuses, it could go up to 100 units per acre. FAR for office, commercial, and light industrial, as well as as well as public and institutional uses, would go up to 1.0 FAR. And then again, with the bonus, if achieved and documented, could be up to 2.0 FAR. The next one, and sorry this is cut off, is the Gateway West Core. So this is just east of the 417, 131 total acres with about 50 vacant today. Again, looking at long-term plans through 2045. This has essentially identical entitlement or development potential as the marketplace, allowing up to 50 dwelling units per acre, 75 if it's mixed use, and then 1.0 FAR for office and commercial, 1.0 for public and institutional, and then I think it's cut off, but it allows up to 80 dwelling units per acre if you're able to achieve the bonus. And I believe it may be 1.5. Sorry, that did not make it on the screen.
Anybody got questions so far? No?
How are you feeling?
Feeling great.
Good.
Okay, well, we can come back to this.
I'll give you a break there.
2.0?
It's 2.0. 2.0.
2.0, thank you. Okay, and maybe you can check on Mitchell Hammock too, because this got cut off. The final of the 5 targeted redevelopment, or 5 targeted development areas for growth on the 2045 map is what we call the Mitchell Hammock West Mitchell Hammock Corridor. So this would involve the development of the undeveloped lands on either side of West Mitchell Hammock Road. Today it's in use for agriculture and for sod. Most of that is vacant today. The residential density would be up to 24 units per acre, which is an increase of today, which is about, I believe, 4 units per acre. Up to 30 units per acre for mixed-use residential. If it goes to office, commercial, or light industrial, Deborah, is that 1.0 or is that?
It's 1.0.
1.0 FAR. And then if the owner or developer were able to achieve the city's criteria for bonus, up to 50 dwelling units per acre, and up to 1.5 FAR. So a pretty substantial increase in development potential for this area. In terms of ensuring a mixture of uses for the marketplace, the Gateway West, and the West Mitchell Hammock Corridor, very similar to the downtown core and downtown transition policies, except we do not have a acreage minimum. So before it was a 5-acre minimum, and that the developments need to include at least 2 land use types of the permissible category there, which is in the left column. And as well, all of the mixed-use developments need to be approved through a master land use plan. So that'll show spatially how the uses will be oriented amongst each other on a site. And then that development agreement, which is an agreement, of course, between the city and the landowner for certain rights to be granted. No one land use may be more than 90%, and no one land use may be 10%. So those are the only percentage thresholds that we are putting to give flexibility to the owners as well as the city to implement. Okay, so we talked a lot about bonuses and what that meant. So there's a new policy, 1-1.1.6, the density and intensity bonuses, which say that these may be granted, not shall be granted, but may be granted for providing a litany of public benefits. So that it would include affordable or workforce housing, and there's a definition for that in the housing element, for providing green building or sustainability practices, for providing publicly accessible plazas, courtyards, or open space, in addition to the minimum required open space, for funding public transportation programs or on-site public transportation facilities. That is a means of trying to get people less reliant on their single occupant automobile, for providing structured parking, which would include publicly accessible parking. So that would be not just providing a parking garage for the residents of your building, but others that would be accessible for the public, even if they have to pay for it. Targeted businesses or industries from the city's strategic plan, which can change from time to time. Other space that contributes to the public realm, elementary, middle, or high school, museum, library, or cultural facility, and the preservation of a historic structure or property. So if somebody's able to reuse an existing property, that may qualify for a density bonus. So as stated before with the future land uses, the Land Development Code will, at the end of the day, regulate the density and intensity bonus range that the city will prepare or will allow, and that Land Development Code update will be before you know it, I'm sure. And this, again, will be memorialized through a development agreement executed between the city and the landowner and developer. All right, some final notes on the land use element. There was a previous remedial amendment that was agreed upon between the state and the city in 1995, or began in 95, agreed in 97. So this has been deleted. The staff has received an amendment from the representatives from that property to remove the restrictions put on that property. So staff concurs with that request and is included in this overall plan update. Okay, I'd like to ask Kakwan to come up and say just a few words on the transportation element.
For the record, Kakwan Ma, 225 East Robinson Street, Orlando, Florida, 32801. I'm here to give him a break. We did talk through the transportation element. We had a lot of discussion about it. It really boils down to three main changes with respect to how we grade the transportation in the area. The first is lowering the cap of the level of service that we're willing to accept on various roads. There were a number of roads within the city that had an adopted level of service of E plus 30%. That has been lowered to E plus 15% and only for arterials and collectors within the downtown core, downtown transition, West Mitchell Hammock corridor, Gateway West Core, and the marketplace. We did revise the transportation master plan and the figures to include all new planned roadway improvements and developer-driven projects, and then new objective 2.1.13 for the soon-to-be presented mobility plan and mobility fee, which will allow for future transition from transportation concurrency. So there is language for concurrency that is in the proposed comprehensive plan, but if the mobility plan and mobility fee are adopted, all of that will go away. So it will allow for future transition from the concurrency, transportation exception area, and impact fees. Just want to show you a few of the figures that were changed as part of the transportation element update. Figure 2.3, which is the adopted roadway level of service. You will see that there is no more E plus 30%. There is the E plus 15, E, and D. So those are the 3 adopted levels of service for the roads within the city, and they are color-coded. You'll see that most of the local roads and many of the periphery roads are level of service D. Level of service E, I think there was only 1 or 2, maybe Franklin was E. Artesia, okay.
No, south of Artesia, that's Magnolia.
Magnolia, okay. And then, so Franklin was E plus 15, and all of the roads that are within the development core growth areas. For the 2045 roadway plan improvements, those are reflected here. These are the improvements that are within the city's TMP, Transportation Master Plan. And this is the roadway capacity with the improvements. So if we were to assume, for example, the Slavia Road extension, the Oviedo Medical Drive, and other capacity improvements, there are, now keep in mind, we're looking 20 some odd years out in the future, but there are still roadway segments that are going to be shown over capacity, and there are, shown in green are the segments that will be near capacity.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the housing element. The main change here is narrative to describe the need to allocate residential acreage to meet the projected housing needs through the year 2045. We updated some of the definitions. Notably, qualifying income was changed to workforce housing, which is used more commonly today. And then some of the, I mentioned we did a number of rewrites just for general readability. Some of the policies were a little verbose when we combined them into objectives. For the wastewater element, one of the notable policies was to require conversion of existing land uses from septic tanks and package plants to central systems when the central system is within 100 feet of the property line. For the solid waste element.
Can I interrupt for just a second? Maybe this isn't the right time to ask a question because it might be for city staff, but I don't want you to have to go anywhere. Are there plans to expand where the existing city sewer lines are, where that would come into effect?
I am not sure, and it would be our Public Works Department that would be responsible for knowing whether or not we're going to expand the sewer area.
All right, thank you. Sorry, thank you.
In the solid waste element, several minor changes here. The first one is just to name that the use of the Seminole County Osceola Road landfill facility as part of the solid waste hauling contract. The second one is adding just a little bit more language about the promotion of anti-litter practices in the public education program. And the third one for 4-2.1.5 is stating that the city's land development regulations shall include requirements for location and screening of centralized storage. So that's making sure that receptacles aren't easily visible from the street, but that's saying that it's going to be done at the land development code rather than at the comp plan. So this would be for townhome, multifamily, mixed-use, office, commercial developments, so generally areas that don't have a garage to put a waste receptacle within. For the potable water element, so there were, like I said, there's a lot of red, minor changes throughout for consistency with the May 2021 water supply facilities work plan. And then there's a change in the level of service. Previously, it was 135 gallons per day, but the city has been working diligently through that water supply facilities plan to reduce overall consumption, and the new level of service is now 95 gallons per day through 2045. Within the conservation element, there are, actually, Mr. Rich helped us with his expertise on quite a few of these that you all heard and had some discussion on. One of the changes that we wanted to bring up that you have already seen, of course, is noting that there's areas that are that will have permits and mitigation approved through appropriate jurisdictional agencies. So trying to kind of not defer, but reference back to those jurisdictional agencies rather than city standards. In the recreation and open space element, the primary change here is the removal or deletion of level of service standards for tennis courts, basketball courts, volleyball courts, football, soccer, rugby, lacrosse fields, baseball and softball fields, swimming pools, and picnic pavilions. This is actually being done by many communities, including my colleagues are at the City of New Smyrna Beach tonight to present a parks master plan, where most communities are, they do have locally adopted parks plans, but they didn't want to put these specific facilities within their comprehensive plan because it then becomes regulated by the state whether or not they have enough, lacrosse fields or baseball fields. So this provides more flexibility for the city for programming without, having, again, that top-down regulation from the state for those very specific uses. For the Intergovernmental Coordination element, we had to rename the Seminole County School Board to the Seminole County School District throughout. There were many policies amended to delete outdated references or outdated agreements and update with new statutory requirements. And then there are numerous policies that were amended related to jurisdictional permits issued by other agencies. So we wanted to make it very clear and provide the statute reference that the city may not require as a condition of processing or issuing a development permit or development order that the applicant obtain a permit or approval from any state or federal agency first, unless the agency has already issued a final action that denies the federal or state permit before the city's action on such development permit. Mr. Hall can talk about this more intelligently than I can, but this is essentially bringing the comp plan in compliance with the recent change to Florida statutes. Within the capital improvements element, again, we updated numerous reference throughout to the proposed level of service standards that are found within the other elements for internal consistency, and we updated the 5-year schedule of capital improvements. So that includes within that first 5 years, the transportation improvements that Mr. Ma talked about, sanitary sewer improvements, potable water improvements, parks improvements, anything that's level of service related was added into the 5-year schedule, as well as the funding source and the year that it's anticipated to be constructed. Any questions on the elements before we talk about the next steps?
I think you're good.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Oh, wait a second. Sorry. Just came off.
When you were talking about the water consumption, you talked about the 130 to 195 gallons. Is that like a maximum capacity that the city can put out, or is that talking about consumption?
That is, so there's two parts to that. That refers to consumption, and the 95 gallons per day consumption was already a target in the previous 2010 plan, where the city wanted to reduce its consumption from 135 down to 95 by the year 2025, and is most of the way there in terms of actual usage. So yes, that is the consumption part of that. The supply side is a different question. So the city's treatment facility, or the city has a 10 million gallon per day capacity, but is only permitted to use 4 and change from that. I think it's 4.06 million gallons per day. So the city has been working with St. John's and the other regulating agencies through that that May 2021 water supply facilities work plan to describe their strategy for supplementing potable water, for conservation to reduce the demand, and also supplementing the potable water supply with reuse or reclaimed water.
Okay. Because I brought it up for two reasons, well, one reason at least. If we're talking about the population growth for 2045, obviously we're not doing single residential, so it shouldn't be lawn watering, but I mean, there's still going to be people that are going to be needing water, so I would think that usage would be going up over time.
Right. So we do, so usage may increase, but we use that set level of service standard as the basis for the projections to 2045, which do show that there would be adequate capacity for the new population.
Okay. But the city can actually pump more water than 95,000, or whatever the number was, 95.
That's gallons per day per capita.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the other question I had was, I know we kind of talked about this a lot at the last meeting, that the E+15 and the E+30. So we dropped it from E30 to E15, and
He does this better than I do.
yeah. So we dropped it from the E30 to E15, which meant that was our capacity maximum, right?
That's correct.
15%.
You're essentially lowering the ceiling.
Okay. So my question gets to be, you talk about Franklin Street, it was listed as an E+15, it's a 2-lane road. 434, by the original Publix and all, that's a 6-lane road, it's also E+15. So obviously, we're not putting the same number of cars on those two different stretches of road. So there's got to be different measures for E+15 for these different roads, correct?
Correct. So the level of service threshold, so the A, B, C, D, E, F, depends on a number of factors. The main one of which is the number of lanes on the road. So the level of service E for a 4-lane road is much higher than level of service E for a 2-lane road.
Okay.
Okay. Level of service E for a state road is slightly higher than a level of service E for a city road.
Is there a reason why they're different? Just curious.
And one last factor is the speed. So there's a higher capacity on a faster speed road than a slower speed road. And these are taken out of the FDOT generalized level of service tables with respect to the capacities.
How do they measure that? Is it like a time to get from point A to point B? Is it that sort of thing? Or how do we decide A, B, C, D, and E?
Sure.
It seems like all our roads-
It's measured by volume. So the capacity is a volume of traffic that passes a certain node. So once a year, the county will put out either cameras or hoses across the road. They'll count it over the course of 3 days, average that, and they'll be able to tell how many cars pass that spot in a given day. So but that's not capacity, that's just demand, right? Capacity is kind of like the supply. And with respect to that, they use, without getting too much into the weeds, basically formulas that were developed by the Highway Capacity Manual and Federal Highway Administration to determine what the capacity should be for certain roads given certain criteria.
Anybody else? You have the floor again.
Thank you. Nobody commented that I shaved. I wanted to look very professional before coming for you today. So next Monday, April 12th, I'm sorry, we're here today at April 12th for the LPA hearing. April 18th will be the City Council Transmittal hearing where they will consider your recommendation that you give to them and may consider amendments to go with that. We would then transmit the package to the state, so that will include all of the strike-through underlines, so the state can see what the city is proposing to change, as well as the data and analysis associated with that. So that includes the water demand, the transportation analysis, other level service related items, so that the city can demonstrate to the state that it is planning responsibly for growth with the infrastructure it has, or that it has plans to add more infrastructure as needed. So after that transmittal, it'll go to Department of Economic Opportunity and then distributed it to the other state agencies who may or may not provide written comments back to us. It's supposed to take about 30 days, and then we would have, depending on if any comments come back, determine how to respond. And then, as Ms. Pierre mentioned, either in June or July, the City Council would consider adoption. It could be, again, depending on whether or not we receive comments, it could be adoption of the identical package that was sent, or there could be changes. And I should also say that the LPA can also recommend amendments tonight to the City Council. And then after the City Council adoption hearing, is it a 30-day period before the effective date of the comp plan?
30
Okay.
days.
So 30 days from the adoption hearing, and then the city will have a new modernized comprehensive plan out to 2045. It will still be subject to the evaluation appraisal report process, which is every 7 years. But it will be, I think, much more streamlined and readable than in years past. So with that, happy to take any other questions. I think.
Quick question, if we do get comments back from the DEO, does staff address those and then it goes back to council for approval, or does it come through us and then go to council, or?
And if there are any objections from the state, staff will answer them, and then they go to City Council for adoption.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cohen. No, you're fine.
A few more. So back on the road. So at E+15, we come back 10 years from now and they measure the road and it's actually running at E+20. What happens?
Well, so.
You say it's overcapacity.
Right. So right now, so one of the roads, for example, Mitchell Hammock Road, does currently operate above level of service E, but below level of service E+15. It is expected that it will still have capacity until about 2025, 2026, looking at my models and looking at the current growth rates. So by that time, if the road does reach capacity, then depending on whether it's overcapacity due to background or due to additional development, if development were to trigger that capacity threshold to go over capacity, they would have to provide mitigation for that. That does change. A lot of this does change again if and when the city adopts the mobility plan and mobility fee. But currently, that's where we're at.
And then my other question was not on traffic. This was back on, when we talked about the density, the density areas in like the downtown core, we talked about the bonuses and whatnot, and you said for some of those it could be up to 100
Yes.
dwelling units per acre.
Yes.
Okay, and in my mind, what does 100 dwelling units per acre look like? Is there anything nearby that would be even close to 100 dwelling units per acre?
Perhaps in the city of Altamont Springs, along the 436 corridor, and then downtown Orlando.
Okay, so we're talking high-rise type things. We're not talking the typical 3 and 4
It
story.
would probably be a minimum of 8 stories,
Okay.
which we do not use stories in comprehensive plan. That's a land development code issue
Okay.
there.
I'm just trying to envision what that looks like in my mind, because I really had no idea. Okay.
Similarly for FAR, what would you say, like Maitland Exchange, that whole Maitland area where all the offices, would that be 1.0 or higher?
Yeah, I think so Kakwan is mentioning, for reference, the Maitland Exchange area is probably about a 0.5 FAR. because there are pretty large parking lots around it, which consume a lot of land, stormwater and open space. So 1.0 FAR would be greater than, anything within the city, certainly. It's more comparable to a downtown urban core like Orlando. But the city's goal is not to become Orlando, but to intensify, because that does provide different opportunities. It provides additional tax base for the city. And it does, again, provide flexibility for if a landowner does have a superior plan that can use the land in a very efficient way, then they would be able to achieve that.
And remind me again, I know you mentioned this, but in the downtown core areas, without the bonuses, what's the dwelling unit number on that one?
It's a bit of a myriad. There's, I think it's 14 to 24 without any bonus. I believe it's up to 50.
50, I think that's.
If it's either a horizontal or vertical mixed use.
Okay.
And then up to 100, again, if they are able to meet those public benefit bonuses.
But the bonuses, what we talked about last time, to be in the land development code, so we're going to come to that at some point in the future. And there's not a guarantee that just because somebody comes in that they have to get a bonus. The city will say no bonus.
Correct. So we are leaving that open.
It said may, not should. Yeah, and to address, we'll be, I guess, working on the land development in the next several months coming up for it, so that'll be another long sessions, hopefully not. But.
So, Mr. Chair, I believe you can open it up for discussion amongst the board or public comment.
Open it up first for a public comment. So at this time, we'll open it for public.
Mr. Chairman, I want to just let you know that staff recommends approval of Ordinance 1720. City attorney also reviewed it, did not have any legal objections.
Okay.
We have 2 letters of support that's provided in your package. One is from Joseph Fisher. The second is from representatives from the Geneva Drive Realignment Agreement properties. And it is recommended that the LPA conduct a public hearing and recommend adoption of Ordinance 1720 to the City Council.
Okay. Since we are having a public hearing, I will open it up to public comments at this time. If anybody wishing to speak in this item, now is the time. Seeing none, I will close the open public comment section. At this time, the board is,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mr. Pollard.
after many, many meetings and work sessions and time and hours, I would like to make a motion to recommend, do we recommend approval here, right? Because we're recommending.
Yeah, recommending.
You're recommending body tonight.
Motion to recommend approval of ordinance number 1720, comprehensive plan update to 2045.
Thank you. Is there a second from anybody?
Second.
Mr. Mathis, a second. Discussion among us. Ms. Pye, you can go
Make the
first. If you
motion,
make
I'll
the
make
motion.
the
Yep.
discussion. So, I think with this, and why we struggled so much with this is, I think this comprehensive plan turns a page from Oviedo's history towards Oviedo's future. We're very much planning for what the city will become. And I know to the many picture frames on the back wall and the people who live in the community, maybe some didn't envision the city growing in this way, maybe some did. But I do trust the hardworking staff and the hardworking consultants and the many founding families who owned a lot of this land or still do, that put all their generations into this community. So I know that, personally, I know I'm sad to see some parts of Oviedo go. I'm optimistic for what the city will become. And while we might not have so many great days in the country remaining, I think we certainly have a lot of great days in the city to come. So with that, I support this comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. Mr. Mathis, do you have any comments? You made this the second.
No, I agree with Mr. Pollock that basically we have done a great work, yes, hard work in the last weeks, yes, so just to accommodate here the 16,000 people that the city will welcome in the next year, and do that in a way that will maintain as much as possible, yes, the identity of Oviedo, yeah, and have the less impact possible on transportation, which is the big topic at this moment. Thank you for all the work.
Thank you. Any other comments from anybody? Steve, you want to make a comment?
I just want to reiterate my thanks for all the hard work and effort that staff and the consultants put in. You did a really good job. It was difficult at times, and you hung in there, and we appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing what Oviedo is going to become in the future.
Anybody else? Well, I want to take the time, I'll take the time to thank staff as well and the consultants, as well as our board.
Yeah.
Because we had a good interjection, and I think hopefully what we've recommended, City Council will adhere to. But again, thank you to staff and the group as well for their times, long hours that we put into this, not only us, but staff and everybody else. All right, seeing that, no other comments? We're good? So at this point, we'll move for a vote. All those in favor of ordinance number 1720 for approval, as mentioned by Mr. Pollak, say aye. Aye. All those against, say nay. Motion carries, so that we'll go now to City Council on the 18th?
Yes, April
18th. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is discussion items. Does anybody, anything to discuss?
I have one thing, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
And again, just want to lay praise on this board. I've been on the LPA on 2 different boards, and both were great. I'm certainly impressed with the professionalism, the intelligence, the thoughtfulness of this board. Everybody brings something unique to the discussion, and I thought we had a very thorough and productive conversation. I am hopeful that City Council will watch the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
There are hours.
And questions and answers that went into our recommendation, and I am hopeful, and I'm assuming everybody on this board remains as hopeful as I am, that City Council adopts our recommendations in total. And with that, I want to thank the city for your patience, the city attorney, consultants, and this board. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, future meeting dates. We have April 19th. Do we have anything coming up that day?
Wisconsin.
No.
No?
No.
And then May 3rd.
It looks like you may have a break.
Pardon?
You may have a break after
may
all
have a
these
break?
long meetings.
I'm going to miss you guys.
Yeah, right. I think we met almost every week this past month and a half.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't have to shave it.
Maybe not, maybe not. All right, seeing no other items on the agenda, I move for an adjournment in a second.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh, we're done.
One down, here you go.